Snow drifted down like ashes from a dying fire, painting the empty streets of New York in ghostly white. It was almost midnight. The city slept under golden streetlights and distant sirens, but one man stood still in the cold, Ethan Blake, a billionaire known for his empire of glass towers and silent heart. His black coat shimmered faintly with flakes of frost as he leaned against his parked car, watching the world blur through the falling snow. Inside that steel cage of success, he felt only a hollow echo, the kind that even money couldn't silence. He was about to step into his car when something small and trembling caught his eye near the alleyway. A figure, thin, wrapped in torn fabric, her breath visible in the air, huddled beside a cardboard box. Her hands, red and raw, clutched a broken toy bear. She couldn't have been older than 16. Ethan hesitated. For years, he had trained himself to look away from pain he couldn't measure, but tonight, something refused to let him turn his head. Maybe it was the silence in her eyes. Maybe it was a memory of a winter long ago when he had been the one outside in the cold. He walked toward her slowly, his footsteps crunching over ice. "Hey," he said quietly, "you'll freeze to death out here." The girl flinched but didn't run. "I'm fine," she whispered, voice hoarse from the cold. "Please, don't call the cops." Ethan crouched beside her, meeting her eyes. They were the color of melted honey, too soft for the world she was in. "I'm not calling anyone," he said. "I'm just asking if you're hungry." Her lips parted, almost smiling but too weak to hold it. "Hungry stopped mattering hours ago," she said. For a moment, neither spoke. Snowflakes melted on her lashes. Ethan's throat tightened as he slipped off his scarf and wrapped it gently around her shoulders. She stiffened, startled by the warmth. "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted softly, "but I want to." "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." Ethan opened the car door and gestured toward it. "Come on, just for the night. You'll be safe, I promise." The girl hesitated, torn between fear and the kind of exhaustion that makes decisions for you. Finally, she nodded. Inside the heated car, she sat silently, her small hands pressed close to the vents. Ethan offered her a cup of hot chocolate from the console, something he had bought out of habit, not hunger. "My name's Ethan," he said after a minute. "Lily," she replied, barely audible. He smiled faintly. "Nice to meet you, Lily. You've got someone I can call? Family? Friends?" She shook her head. None that would answer. He didn't push further. The city lights passed in streaks as they drove through the quiet roads. The heater hummed. Lily's eyes grew heavy, and soon she was asleep, her head resting against the window. Ethan glanced at her reflection, fragile, peaceful, and something inside him cracked. He remembered another winter, another girl, his sister Ava, who never made it through the night after he'd left home chasing dreams of wealth. He had built skyscrapers, but not bridges, and now the cold had come collecting again. He brought Lily to his penthouse, walls of glass overlooking a city too bright to feel. She stared wide-eyed at the view, whispering, "It looks like stars trapped in cages." Ethan laughed quietly. That's one way to put it. He guided her to the guest room, clean sheets, warmth, and silence thick enough to sleep in. "You can rest here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure things out." She nodded. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice cracking. No one's ever stopped before. Ethan paused at the door. Then maybe it's about time someone did. When he turned off the light and left the room, he felt something strange, a heaviness and peace tangled together. As he stood in the hallway, looking out over the glittering skyline, he realized he hadn't felt this human in years. Down the corridor, Lily lay awake. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of folded paper, a letter. Her eyes filled with tears as she pressed it against her chest, whispering, "Just one more chance, please." The night deepened. Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft, endless, and silent. And for the first time in a decade, Ethan Blake prayed. Morning crept softly into the penthouse, painting the glass walls in gold. The storm had passed, but it still lingered. Ethan stood by the kitchen counter, a cup of black coffee in his hand. staring at the skyline that had once felt like victory, now just a reminder how far he drifted from real people. The silence was broken by the quiet shuffle of footsteps. Lily appeared hesitantly, her hair still damp from a shower, wearing one of his oversized hoodies that nearly swallowed her whole. She looked cleaner now, but her eyes still carried the weight of the street, that cautious look of someone who'd learned not to expect gentleness twice. "I made breakfast," Ethan said, gesturing toward the table. Pancakes, fruit, and tea, the kind of breakfast that belonged to someone who didn't have to think about price tags. Her gaze flickered between the plates and him. "You didn't have to do all this." He smiled faintly. "You said that last night, too." "I mean it," she whispered, taking the seat slowly. "People don't just help without a reason." Ethan sat across from her, fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "Maybe they should." Lily didn't answer, but for the first time, she took a bite. The simple warmth of food brought tears to her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away. Ethan pretended not to notice. Some pain was meant to be respected in silence. As the minutes passed, her shoulders relaxed, the fear fading little by little. Ethan found himself asking questions, gentle ones. Where she came from, how long she'd been on the streets. Her answers came in small, fragmented truths. Her mother gone, her father unknown, foster homes that felt more like cages and safety. She laughed once, bitterly. "I used to dream of having a room with a door that locked from the inside. Funny, right?" Ethan didn't laugh. He just said softly, "It's not funny at all." She glanced at him, studying the man across the table, tailored, confident, kind-eyed yet distant. "You talk like someone who knows what it's like," she murmured. He froze for a moment. "Maybe I do." For a while, neither spoke. The city moved outside, life rushing past glass walls, unaware that inside, something fragile and good were beginning to bloom again. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Later that day, Ethan gave her a small tour of the penthouse, not to impress, but to ease attention. He showed her the living room, his office, and finally a balcony that overlooked Central Park. Lily stepped out, the wind tangling her hair, her eyes widening at the sight of endless green and distant city lights. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Ethan leaned against the railing beside her. "You'd be surprised how ugly it can feel when you have everything and still nothing inside." She looked up at him curiously. "You sound lonely." He chuckled dryly. "That obvious, huh?" "Lonely people notice lonely people," she said simply. Something about her words struck him deeply, maybe because they came from someone who had every reason to shut the world out, yet still saw him. That afternoon, Ethan made a few calls, arranging a doctor's appointment for her, buying clothes that actually fit, even setting up a guest card so she could move freely within the building. Lily protested at first, embarrassed, but he stopped her gently. "You're not charity, Lily. You're a person who deserves warmth." That night, when she returned from her checkup, she found a small box on her bed. Inside was a silver locket, simple but elegant, with a note, "For new beginnings." She held it to her chest, tears welling again. She didn't know why the stranger cared so much, but in her heart, she felt a spark of something she'd forgotten existed. Safety. Ethan watched from the doorway quietly, unseen. He didn't understand why he was doing all this either. Maybe it was guilt, maybe redemption, or maybe it was a first step toward forgiving himself. Downstairs, his phone buzzed, a reminder of meetings, deals, and board votes waiting for his attention. But for the first time in years, Ethan ignored them all. Tonight, saving one soul mattered more than saving company. He didn't know yet that the small folded letter Lily carried would one day change everything. The way he saw himself, the way he loved, and the way he lived. But fate had already begun writing. And somewhere deep inside, he could feel the ink drying. Days passed quietly in the glass tower that overlooked the city. Ethan found himself rearranging his schedule, canceling meetings, and skipping luncheons that once seemed vital. His assistant had stopped asking why. The truth was, even Ethan didn't know. He just knew that when Lily smiled, shy, small, and real, the echo inside him quieted. Lily had started reading in the mornings, curled up in the corner of the massive living room with sunlight streaming through the windows. Sometimes she'd hum softly, the sound fragile but full of life. Ethan would watch from the kitchen, pretending to check his emails, though he hadn't opened a single one. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the glass, Ethan found Lily sitting on the floor, surrounded by sheets of paper. "Homework?" he asked with a grin. She looked up, startled. "Oh, no. I'm just writing. It helps me think." "Writing what?" "Letters," she said, eyes dropping to the paper. "To people who'll never read them." Ethan tilted his head. "Anyone I'd know." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, if you believe in ghosts." He didn't press. He knew the weight of things unsaid, how silence could hold stories too painful to voice. Instead, he sat beside her, picking up a blank sheet. "Teach me," he said quietly. "I've forgotten how to write anything that isn't a contract." Lily's laugh was small but pure. "It's easy. You just start with the truth." "The truth," he repeated, the word catching in his throat. "That's the hard part." For a moment, their eyes met, two people carrying different kinds of scars, finding in each other a reflection of what they'd lost. That night, while Ethan worked late in his study, he glanced at the corner of his desk where Lily's half-finished letters sat neatly stacked. Curiosity tugged at him, but he didn't touch them. Instead, he thought of his own letter, one he'd never written, to the sister he'd left behind all those years ago. The guilt still lived in his chest, cold and unrelenting. He opened the drawer and pulled out a small photograph, edges worn. Two children laughing in the snow, one boy, one girl. He ran his thumb over her face and whispered, "You'd have liked her, Ava." The rain outside grew heavier. From down the hall, he heard Lily coughing, harsh, dry. He rushed to her room and found her sitting up, pale and trembling. "You okay?" he asked, panic flashing in his eyes. "Yeah," she lied. "Just tired." He fetched her water, hovering anxiously. "We'll go to the doctor tomorrow." She shook her head. "Please don't spend more money on me, Ethan. You've done enough." "Enough?" His voice cracked. "Lily, what's enough when someone's life is on the line?" She looked at him then, really looked, and said softly, "You sound like you've lost someone before." Ethan froze. "Yeah," he whispered. "I have." There was a pause heavy enough to crush the room. Then she reached out, her small hand resting over his. "Maybe saving me is your way of saving them too." He didn't answer, but that night he didn't sleep either. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. The next morning, the city shimmered after the storm. Lily insisted on making breakfast this time. She wore one of his aprons, comically large on her small frame, and the smell of pancakes filled the air again. Ethan smiled as he watched her hum and flipped the pan clumsily. "You're getting good at that," he teased. She giggled. "Don't jinx it, Mr. Billionaire. I almost set your kitchen on fire 10 minutes ago." He laughed, a sound he hadn't made in years. For a brief second, it felt like a family morning, something long stolen by ambition and regret. But beneath the warmth lingered a quiet question. Why did Lily's cough sound worse each day? And why, when she thought he wasn't looking, did she stare at her reflection with that same distant sadness? Ethan didn't know that the answer to both questions lived inside the letter she kept folded in her jacket pocket, the one she'd written before that freezing night, never meant to be found. And soon, that letter would become the bridge between his past and hers, the one truth they were both running from. The city began to thaw as spring crept in, but inside Ethan's penthouse, warmth had already bloomed. Days carried a rhythm now. Quiet breakfasts, evening talks, laughter that echoed faintly off the glass. Ethan often found himself forgetting the ticking of clocks, the weight of boardrooms, the hollow applause of shareholders. But one afternoon, while reviewing a report, a call from his assistant sliced through the calm. "So, the foundation dinner is next week. You're expected to make the keynote speech." Ethan sighed. "Cancel it." "Cancel? But it's your charity event." "I said cancel." He hung up, rubbing his forehead. Lily looked up from the couch where she'd been sketching. "You're skipping a charity event? Isn't that important?" Ethan smiled faintly. Not as important as breakfast with you. She rolled her eyes playfully, but her cheeks warmed. You can't hide from your world forever, Ethan. He leaned back. Maybe I'm trying to find a better one. That night, while they watched an old movie, Lily asked quietly, Do you ever miss the person you were before all the money? Ethan thought for a long moment. I miss being able to feel without fear. Somewhere along the way, I learned to measure everything, even kindness. She nodded slowly. Then maybe this is your second chance. He turned to her, her face lit softly by the flicker of the TV. Second chance for what? For being human again. Her words lingered long after the movie ended. The next morning, Ethan noticed a sketchbook left open on the table. The page showed two figures, a girl standing in the snow and a man holding out his coat. Beneath it, written in small letters, everyone deserves a warm place to belong. Something inside him stayed. He reached for his phone and made a call he hadn't considered in years. Liam, it's Ethan. I need you to help me start a new project, something for the homeless youth in the city. Shelters, education programs, anything that actually changes lives. His friend on the other end hesitated. That's not exactly your business model. Then maybe it's time to change my business. When he ended the call, Lily was standing by the doorway, eyes wide. You're serious? He smiled. Dead serious. Tears filled her eyes before she could hide them. You're going to help them, people like me. People like us, he corrected softly. She nodded, unable to speak. And then, for the first time, she hugged him. Ethan froze for a second, then wrapped his arms around her, feeling something inside him finally unlock the simple grace of being needed. That evening, while the sun dipped behind the skyline, Ethan sat beside Lily on the balcony, watching the city fade into gold. You know, he said, I used to think the world revolved around profit margins. But you reminded me that people matter more. She smiled faintly. Then maybe I did something good after all. He looked at her, puzzled. What do you mean? Nothing, she whispered. Just, it's nice to matter. He didn't realize it then, but her words carried a shadow, one he wouldn't understand until much later. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. A week later, Ethan's new project, the Warmth Foundation, was announced publicly. The press called a surprising act of philanthropy from the city's most elusive billionaire. But for Ethan, it wasn't about headlines. It was about Lily. He invited her to the first site visit, an old building downtown being renovated into a youth shelter. Lily's face glowed as she walked through the halls, touching the fresh-painted walls, smiling at the workers. This place, she whispered, it already feels alive. Ethan watched her, pride swelling quietly. You helped inspire this, you know. She laughed softly. Then maybe my life wasn't such a waste after all. He frowned. Don't ever say that again, Lily. You're the reason I'm even trying. Her eyes softened. Then promise me one thing, she said. No matter what happens, don't stop helping people, even if I'm not around. He chuckled. Where else would you go? She didn't answer, just looked out the window at the sun setting behind the city, her expression unreadable. That night, as they returned home, Lily wrote another letter, her handwriting shaky, her tears staining the paper. She sealed it quietly, hiding it beneath her pillow before falling asleep to the sound of the city's hum. And somewhere, in the silence between her breaths, fate whispered again, softly, almost kindly, It's time. Morning sunlight spilled through the glass walls, but it brought no warmth this time. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of quiet that feels wrong. Ethan knocked gently on Lily's door. No answer. He tried again, a little louder. Still nothing. He pushed the door open. The bed was neatly made, the window half open, the air faintly cold. On the pillow lay the silver locket he'd given her, glinting in the light. A folded letter rested beside it, her name written in small, trembling strokes. Ethan's heart lurched. He picked it up with shaking hands, sinking onto the edge of the bed. The first line stole his breath. Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, please don't worry. I didn't run away because of you. I ran because I couldn't let you carry my pain anymore. His fingers trembled as he kept reading. You saved me from the cold. But the truth is, it was never just hunger or frost. I've been sick for a while, something I never told anyone. The doctors said it was too late months ago. I didn't want to make you sad, not after you finally started smiling again. Tears blurred the ink. Ethan pressed the letter to his chest as if it could undo time. You gave me warmth when I'd already accepted the cold. For that, I'll always be grateful. You said everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe this was mine, just shorter than I hoped. Promise me you'll keep helping others like me. That way, I'll still be here somehow, in every soul you save. Thank you, Ethan, for seeing me. Lily, his world tilted. He stumbled to his feet, searching desperately. The balcony, the hallway, the elevator. She was gone. He called hospitals, shelters, police stations. Nothing. It was as if the city had swallowed her whole. By evening, the skyline outside burned with sunset, mocking him with its beauty. Ethan sat in her empty room, clutching the letter, tears running silently down his face. The sound of rain began again, gentle and cruel. He whispered, "You can't just disappear. Lily, not after everything." In that silence, something inside him broke, but through the cracks came something else too, resolve. He reopened the foundation the next morning with a new name, the Lily Project. It wasn't about charity anymore. It was about remembrance, about giving every child lost in the cold a place to belong. He sold one of his companies, poured millions into shelters, and personally oversaw every site. At night, he would stand on rooftops watching the city lights and whisper her name, as if she could hear him in the wind. One evening, while reviewing donations, his secretary entered. "Sir, there's something you should see. A girl was found last night at St. Clair's Hospital. They said she had your business card in her pocket." Ethan froze. "What did you say?" "She's asking for you." He didn't even grab his coat. Within minutes, he was in his car, racing through the rain. The city blurred around him, horns, lights, memories, until he burst through the hospital doors. Room 214. When he stepped inside, his breath caught. Lily lay there, pale, fragile, but alive. She turned her head slowly, a faint smile breaking across her lips. "You found me." Ethan fell to his knees beside her bed. "Don't you ever scare me like that again," he whispered, his voice breaking. She reached out weakly, her fingers brushing his cheek. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted you to let go of the guilt." "Guilt?" he asked. She smiled softly. "The one you carry when you look at me, like you're trying to fix something that broke a long time ago." He bowed his head. "You reminded me of my sister. She died in winter, just like that night I found you." "I know," Lily whispered. "You talk in your sleep." He laughed through tears, pressing her hand to his. "Then you already know I can't lose you too. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't." Lily smiled faintly. "You won't. I promise." But promises, like hearts, sometimes shatter quietly, because fate wasn't finished with them yet, not even close. Outside the window, thunder rolled again, distant and deep, as if the world itself held its breath. Ethan leaned closer, whispering, "Rest. I'm here now." Lily closed her eyes, the rhythm of her breathing fragile but steady. For the first time since that snowy night, she slept without fear. Ethan sat there long after midnight, holding her hand, unaware that destiny had one final letter to deliver, one that would reveal the truth about why she'd written the first. Days passed in slow rhythm within the pale walls of St. Clair's Hospital. Ethan was there every morning before sunrise, sitting by Lily's bedside, listening to the quiet hum of machines that seemed to breathe for her. The doctors said she was stable for now, but her illness had spread too far. Each word from them felt like another stone placed gently on his chest. Lily, though weak, kept her smile. She teased him for his terrible coffee choices, laughed softly when he tried to read her hospital magazines, and painted small sketches on napkins with borrowed pens. Every stroke was a story, sometimes of hope, sometimes of endings. One afternoon, Ethan brought her a small box. "What's this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. He smiled. Something I promised to show you when you got better. Inside the box was a photograph, the first completed shelter of the Lily Project. Painted across the doorway were her own words, "Everyone deserves a warm place to belong." Her eyes filled instantly. "You really used my line." "Of course," he said. "You wrote it better than any architect ever could." She laughed, but the sound broke into a cough that left her breathless. He held her hand until it passed. When she looked at him again, her expression had changed. Something way behind her smile. "Ethan," she said softly, "there's something I need to tell you." He leaned closer, heart thudding. "What is it?" She hesitated, glancing toward the window where rain slid in slow silver trails. "I knew who you were before that night." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. "I wasn't just some random girl you found on the street. I was looking for you." He stayed, the words sinking in slowly. "Looking for me? Why?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Because my mother used to work for your company, years ago, before she got sick. She was one of the janitors in your first office tower. She always said you were kind once, before the money changed you. After she died, I wanted to see if she was right." Ethan's throat closed. "Lily, why didn't you tell me?" "I was scared," she whispered. "I thought you'd send me away. I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe I'd see the man she believed still existed." Ethan sat back, shattered. All those years he had blamed himself for losing his humanity, and now this girl, this fragile stranger, had come into his life like a mirror of everything he'd forgotten. He pressed his palms to his eyes, voice trembling. "God, I was so blind." Lily reached out weakly, resting her small hand on his arm. "You weren't blind. You were hurt. Sometimes people hide behind success because failure broke them first." He looked up at her, his own tears blurring the world. "You forgive me? For what I became?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "I forgave you long before I met you." He broke then, quietly, completely, and leaned forward, his forehead resting against her hand. She stroked his hair, whispering, "You don't have to keep punishing yourself, Ethan. You did good. You gave warmth to others. That's what matters now." For the first time in years, the tightness in his chest began to ease. It wasn't gone. Grief never leaves fully, but it softened, like snow melting beneath sunlight. "Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." That evening, Ethan stayed long after visiting hours. Nurses walked quietly past as he watched Lily sleep, her breath shallow but peaceful. He remembered the boy he once was, ambitious, proud, running so fast toward success that he didn't notice who he left behind. And then, in this small hospital room, he realized something profound. Redemption doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with a single person whispering, "I still believe in you." Before leaving, he whispered, "Rest easy, Lily. You gave me back my soul." He didn't notice the nurse slipping something into his hand as he turned to go, a small envelope, sealed with a drawing of a snowflake. "She asked me to give you this as she couldn't say goodbye," the nurse said softly. Ethan froze, the world narrowing to that single piece of paper. Outside, lightning flared against the sky. He walked to the parking lot in silence, the envelope trembling in his grip. He couldn't open it yet, not tonight. He sat in the car, staring at the rain, whispering, "Please, not again." Because deep down, he knew what that kind of letter meant. The next morning arrived gray and quiet, the kind of morning that felt like the world was holding its breath. Ethan sat in his office, the unopened envelope resting on the table in front of him. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. He had stared at that snowflake drawing for so long that its shape had begun to blur. Finally, he took a deep breath and broke the seal. Inside was a single page, her familiar handwriting trembling but careful. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means my time ran out faster than I hoped. Please don't grieve for me. I got to live something beautiful. I got to be seen. You gave me warmth, not just the kind that melts snow, but the kind that melts walls people build around their hearts. Promise me you will keep smiling, not the smile you wear for cameras, but the one you had when you saw that first shelter open. That's a smile that saves lives. When the snow falls again, don't remember how I left. Remember how we met, in the cold, when you chose to stop? Thank you for not looking away. By the time he reached the end, tears blurred the words until they bled together. Ethan pressed a letter to his heart, whispering, "You are my second chance, Lily." He spent the rest of the day in silence, sitting by the window as the clouds began to darken. Hours later, soft flakes began to fall again, slow, delicate, endless. The first snow since the night he met her. He stood and opened the window, letting the cold rush in. The city glittered below like a field of fallen stars. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the sting of the wind, and for the first time, the cold didn't hurt. It felt like her, quiet, pure, forgiving. Down below, the Lily Project main shelter opened its doors to a line of waiting children. A volunteer turned on the lights, illuminating the sign above, "For those who have nowhere else to go, come home." Ethan went there that night, walking through the snowfall in just his coat, no driver, no bodyguards. Inside, the scent of warm soup and laughter filled the air. Children played, people smiled, and in their faces, he saw fragments of Lily everywhere. He sat beside a young boy curled up in a blanket and asked softly, "You okay, kid?" The boy nodded. "Yeah. The lady here said someone made this place just for us." Ethan smiled faintly. She was right. The boy looked up curiously. What was her name? Ethan hesitated, eyes misting. Lily. Her name was Lily. The boy grinned. "That's a pretty name." It was, Ethan whispered. "It still is." He walked through the halls, touching the walls, watching families reunite, people eat, children laugh. Every sound was an echo of something Lily had awakened in him. Compassion, purpose, humanity. He stood before the memorial wall, a small corner filled with letters from those the shelter had helped. Among them, someone had already framed Lily's first note, the one she had written before that cold night. If anyone ever finds this, don't give up on the world. Sometimes, kindness is just waiting around the corner. Ethan smiled through tears, whispering, "You were the corner, Lily, and I was lucky enough to turn toward you." Outside, the snow thickened, falling in quiet waves of white. He stepped outside again, raising his face to the sky, letting the flakes melt against his skin. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply as the sounds of the shelter drifted behind him. Laughter, comfort, belonging. Somewhere within that soft chaos, he could almost hear her voice, faint but certain. Everyone deserves a warm place to belong. He whispered into the night, "You found yours, Lily, and so did I." The snow fell heavier, blanketing the world in quiet peace. Ethan smiled, letting the cold embrace him, not as punishment this time, but as remembrance. And for the first time since the night she entered his life, he finally felt warm. Weeks passed, and winter slowly faded into a gentler kind of cold. Ethan continued his work with quiet devotion, not for recognition, but because it gave him peace. The Lily Project expanded, shelters opened in other cities, volunteers multiplied, and the name Lily began to travel farther than she ever could in life. He visited each new shelter himself. Every time, he left a small framed photograph of a snowflake on the front desk. No words, no dedication, just a symbol that once sealed her final letter. One evening, months later, he stood on the rooftop of the first building they'd ever opened. The city shimmered below, alive with a million lights. Behind him, laughter drifted up from inside. Children telling stories, volunteers serving dinner, the hum of life continuing. Ethan leaned against the railing, his breath misting in the cool air. He thought of how strange it was that the girl who had nothing had left behind everything that mattered. She hadn't changed the world through wealth or power. She had changed one heart, and that was enough to start a ripple that never stopped. He took out her last letter again, its edges soft from being opened too often. The ink had faded, but the words still burned bright in his mind. "You gave me warmth when I'd already accepted the cold." He whispered, "And you gave me light when I'd forgotten what it looked like." A light snow began to fall again, each flake catching the glow of the city. It was almost poetic, as if the sky remembered her too. Ethan closed his eyes and smiled. You see this, Lily? It's still snowing. Down below, a group of kids ran into the courtyard laughing, trying to catch the flakes on their tongues. One girl stopped and pointed upward. Look, it's snowing for her again. The others laughed, and Ethan felt his throat tighten. He turned away, blinking back tears, and whispered to the night, she'd like that. The memory of her laugh, her voice, the way she looked at the world as if it could still be beautiful, all of it stayed with him. But it didn't hurt anymore. It healed. He had learned that love wasn't about how long it lasted. It was about how deeply it changed you while it lived. And for Ethan, that was forever. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be a way of saying, I felt you. Ethan took one last look at the skyline before heading inside. The warmth of the shelter wrapped around him, the clatter of dishes, the hum of laughter, the quiet comfort of belonging. On a nearby wall hung a new mural, painted by the children. It showed a man and a girl under a snowy sky, sharing a single coat between them. Below it, in bright blue letters, the message read, Kindness never dies. It just finds new hands to hold. Ethan touched the edge of the painting gently, smiling through misted eyes. You're still here, Lily, he whispered, in every hand that reaches out. Outside, the snow fell slower now, as if the world itself was taking a deep, peaceful breath. Ethan walked to the entrance, where a small boy tugged at his sleeve. Mr. Ethan, the boy asked, is it true that one person can really change everything? He knelt down, meeting the child's eyes. Yes, he said softly. Sometimes all it takes is someone who refuses to stop caring, even when it hurts. The boy grinned and ran off to play, his laughter echoing through the hall. Ethan stepped outside once more, standing beneath the snowfall. He looked up, whispering a quiet prayer not of sorrow, but of gratitude. Thank you, Lily, for teaching me what it means to be human. The wind carried the flakes around him, soft and bright, and for the briefest moment, he thought he saw her, a figure in the distance, smiling through the falling snow, her hair dancing in the light. He didn't move. He just smiled back. Then she was gone, like snow melting into air, but the warmth she left behind stayed. Always,